So today's topic is designing the sustainability plan, how to score with donors. And we will jump right in with a definition. Maybe just a couple of words about myself and about Philanthropia. My name is Eva. I'm from Germany. I have worked with NGOs and mainly grassroots NGOs all around the world for the last almost 15 years now. I lived in Ecuador for a while, 7 years in Nepal, and since 2019, I'm back in Germany. And I have worked with Philanthropia for many years as well. Philanthropia is a consulting company. We do a lot of training. That's how you know us, probably from all our training videos, from our online courses, from our resources that we share about proposal writing. And yeah, we love to have you on board. We love to share with you today, and we hope to see you in many more webinars, trainings, and online courses. So what is sustainability? The word sustainability plan or sustainability gets thrown around a lot these days, and also in proposal writing. So when you have to write a proposal, that is usually one thing that you have to cover. If you get guidelines, then it tells you what's your sustainability plan, and then you have to fill out that section. Or sometimes it just asks you, how are you going to follow-up costs? How are you going to ensure long-term funding and sustainability of the project? So that is where your sustainability plan comes into play. But it is really important for you to understand the distinction between sustainability, the word as it is used in the environmental discourse, for example, and the sustainability plan, the project sustainability that we're going to talk about today. So we'll start with a definition of sustainability as a whole from the Brundtland report, which is one of the most famous definitions that there are, and they are used widely. Sustainable development is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So that means this refers very much to the concept of environmental sustainability, or that is one of the biggest pillars here. This definition was first published in 1987 in this report, when it became more and more obvious that we were using too many resources. We were using more resources than there are, and that there's going to be an issue long term. Nowadays, we say there are 3 pillars to sustainability, or sometimes even 4, where you can display sustainability almost as a house. And the pillars, or the different aspects of sustainability as the pillars. We have in the middle, the most important one, or the most known one, the environmental sustainability, where we talk about climate change, depletion of resources, soil erosion, desertification, etc. All of these things. This is the most talked about, obviously. Then we also have economic sustainability. So how can things be financed in a sustainable long-term way? And social sustainability. How can social systems be nourished long-term? And sometimes now it's also included a 4th pillar, which is cultural sustainability. So how can cultures also be maintained so that future generations can still experience those cultures and be part of them? So that is the classic definition of sustainability when we talk about sustainability as a whole. But project sustainability, the thing that donors want to know about usually, is a little bit different. Obviously, whenever a donor asks you for the sustainability, you have to check what they mean by that. Sometimes they do mean environmental sustainability. They want to know what you are doing to protect the environment. What are you doing to make sure that your project doesn't have negative impact on the environment? And so sometimes that is what they want to know. For a while, the European Commission had a very, very environmental centric focus of the word. So then they only wanted to know, what was your plan? What was the project's plan to kind of limit their impact to, as little as possible? But most of the time, project sustainability means more, how are you going to finance a project long term? how is this project going to be maintained after the grant is finished and in the future, in the longer future? That is the project sustainability, the ability of the project to keep running, to keep existing, even after the first phase, the initial phase, the first 3, 4, 5 years are over. That is what project sustainability describes. So you see that concept is a bit different. And usually, again, you have to check what the donor exactly means when they ask you for the sustainability plan. Usually, that is what they mean. I really like this quote because I think it describes it very well. It says, if your proposal is a story, then think of the sustainability plan as the sequel of the story. So as how the story will continue. So the proposal describes the first part of the story. No, what are you going to do? What are your plans, etc. And the sustainability plan describes the sequel. What will happen next? What other things that are going to happen after the first story is over. Obviously, that is very far in the future. So a proposal is already talking about the future, is already talking about a potential future, no? A future where you don't always 100% know if everything will happen the way you think it will happen. And then to even talk further into the future. So what will happen after the proposal, after our plan, and we don't even know how the plan will finish. That is a bit, yeah, you have to imagine a little bit, but at least you have to know the general gist of the story, kind of, because if you write a story and you don't think at all about the sequel, and then you want to write a sequel, and sometimes the sequel doesn't really fit with the story, and that becomes a problem. So even when you write the story, you already have to think about how you want to continue the story. No, you already have to think about what happens next. So that is why developing a sustainability plan, even when you only write a proposal now, is already important, because it will, parts of it will determine the what your project will look like, and will determine what your project will look like now, even if the sustainability plan or the actions that you want to do then is in the far future. Again, what is important to understand that usually project sustainability is not necessarily environmental sustainability. When a donor asks you for your project sustainability, usually they don't want to know if you are recycling the trash, or if you are using only vegan food in your cafeteria, etc. That is usually not what they want to hear in those cases. What they do want to hear is how your project is going to be sustained long term. How are you going to pay people long term? How are you going to make sure that the project is going to be there, and that the people can still benefit from it, that the results that you have produced will be there long term. I've just seen one question. Yes, we will share the presentation after this. So you will get a link with the recording and the presentation, and any links, anything that I mentioned, we will send to you in an email as well. So don't worry about that. Oh, I'm sorry. It's a really hot day in Germany, so I'm having a little bit of issues with the air because I had to close the window. So sometimes, yeah, if I make a small break, it's because I kind of have to breathe because it's so hot in here. Yeah, so just understand that project sustainability is not necessarily the same as environmental sustainability. Environmental sustainability usually is a cross-cutting issue. So you do have to address it. You have to make sure that your project doesn't have a huge ecological footprint. You have to make sure that you don't use too many plastics, that you don't have any negative effect on the environment. So you have to show that, you have to tell people that, but not in this section. Usually you have to describe that when you describe your activity, so when you describe your plan. So just to make sure to keep that apart, and be sure that you understand the definition of the donor of the term, because sometimes they might mean environmental sustainability, but then usually they will also tell you that. Why is this section so important for donors? Why do they want to see it at all? If it's a sequel to your story and if it's so far in the future, why would they be interested in knowing about it? Of course, there's a couple of reasons. So one of the main reasons is that the investment that they make, that the donor makes, needs to be successful in the long term. So the donors, when they give you a grant, they think of that as an investment. Obviously, they don't want a return or a monetary return on their investment. They don't want you to pay them back or to pay them back with interest. But what they do want to see is a long-term functioning, sustainable project that will be there long term. So if you have a great sustainability plan and if you can show them how you want to do this, how you can manage to be there long term, that is going to be a very convincing argument, because then they will get a return on their investment, which will be that the situation for the beneficiaries, for the people you work with, will change in the long term and sustainably. And that's what they do want. Often we forget that donors also have their own donors. They have their own board that they have to be responsible to, that they have to answer questions to. And they have to show that whichever project they support are projects that are worth their while, and that really handle the money and handle the investments in a responsible manner. They also want to see if you think into the future, because if you're not thinking about the future at all, that maybe doesn't make you the best partner either, no? If you have a great sustainability plan, if you can show that you've thought all these eventualities through, you know the assumptions, you know the risks, and you know what you want to do in the future, that's a great argument for your proposal, because that means that you're an expert in your field, that you really know what you're doing, that you really know what people need, what people want, how you can work with them, etc. So they want to see that. If you can think into the future, if you think holistically, if you look at all sides of the argument, all sides of the story, and if you can incorporate that into a plan. Then they also, like I said, they also have to justify their decisions to their own board, their funder, their donor, etc. So they have to have good reasoning. And if you can show that your project, even if they invest 10,000 now, but those 10,000 will still have great impact in 10 years, that's a good argument for them to support your project. So this is what you can show them in this section. Also, just as a heads up already, I think this is one of the most underused parts of the proposal, because many applicants don't really use this section well. They just write something short, something relatively sloppy, and can't convince the donor. But this is, if you do well here, if you really have a great sustainability plan, if you can show that you have thought this through, that you know your target group, that you know the people you want to work with, that you think into the future, that you have financial understanding, then you can really distinguish yourself and really make sure that you're different than all the other proposals that a donor receives. So what are the parts of a sustainability plan, or what are the parts of project sustainability? There's three major parts to it that you have to think about. There's community sustainability, organizational sustainability, and financial sustainability. And all those three combined lead to project sustainability. But you have to think about all three. You think back at the slide in the beginning, sustainability as a whole also has different pillars, and you need all pillars so that the roof doesn't fall. And it's the same here. You need all three areas to achieve project sustainability. If you just have one, that's probably not going to do it long term. So community sustainability means how well your project is rooted in the community. How well are you connected? Is the project answering a need that came from the community? Is the project answering a desire or like a basic need that people have? Or is it just something that somebody made up in a boardroom at a whiteboard and that is not connected to realities in the field at all? So community sustainability, we'll talk more about that in a second. Also means how participatory are your methods? Did you include everyone? Is everybody on board? Do the people, the target group, do they feel ownership, etc.? Then the organizational sustainability. That means how sustainable is your organization as a whole? Are you going to be a long-term partner? Is your organization on stable feet, or do you run the risk of going bankrupt halfway through the project, or maybe even 2 years after the project finished? But if your organization is going to cease to exist, then that's going to be a big issue, because that means that you're not going to be there to work on the project long term. So how stable, how sustainable is your organization? That is a huge part that contributes towards project sustainability. And the last part, which is often considered to be the most important, but not, again, it's not the only thing that is important, is financial sustainability. So how are you going to sustain your project long term? How are you going to be able to pay for things long term? Where's the money going to come from? So there's different ways on how you can do that, different ideas on how to achieve that. Often it's the only thing that NGOs focus on when they fill out this section. They only describe where they want to get the money from in the future, but the other two pillars are also very important, because without the community feeling ownership and carrying the project, it will not continue. Because if there's no true need, and if you didn't do a proper needs assessment, then the project will not continue if it doesn't address a true need. And if your organization ceases to exist 1 year after the project, then how can it continue? No? So the other two pillars are important as well. Financial sustainability obviously is crucial, but again, it's not the only thing you should focus at. So we've gone through a lot of research of studies that have identified factors that also contribute towards a successful project sustainability. So what are the factors in a project that determine if it can be successful long term? And here, the most important ones that were identified in the studies were the following, and obviously they are important for achieving project sustainability, but you will see that in general, most of them are crucial to run successful projects on a larger scale as well. So it's really a great tool to look at those and look at your organization and see how you can maybe attain that, how you can get better at those things. So the first thing is that if you have a coherent mission or theory of change, that really contributes towards project sustainability. So that means if you have a document that writes up what you want to achieve with your organization and how you want to achieve it and what your goals and objectives are. So the direction you want to move into with your organization, the changes you want to make in people's lives. And that sounds very obvious, but many organizations don't have that written down. They don't have it in a document. They're not sharing it. So many of their employees don't know about it. And so then it's very difficult to kind of move into just one direction and be always focused. Some organizations are not so clear about that. So then they do one project here, one project there, and it's not all in one direction. And in general, if your organization has a mission statement that is formulated well, that everybody knows, everybody's on board with, that is coherent with your theory of change, and all the actions that you've planned within the project are also congruent to your theory of change, that really contributes towards long-term success. Because I think it's pretty obvious, if you have one coherent strategy that everybody knows they have to follow, then obviously, and that project falls under that, then other projects will contribute towards it as well, and it will really positively influence the long-term success. Then you have monitoring and evaluation and shared results of that. Obviously, if you have good monitoring and evaluation strategies in place, then you will get the results. You will have many lessons learned from processes. No? You will get an evaluation at the end. So somebody will tell you what you did very well, what you maybe didn't do so well, and from that you can learn. And if all those results are shared not only with your own team, but also with project participants, etc., then that is even going to be better, because then everybody can learn from it, and that really contributes to the project sustainability. Then the next thing that is an important factor is the adaptability of the approach. That means how well and how quickly can you change your approach within your project to changing circumstances. And I think the best example was the COVID crisis now, because so many things on a large scale that nobody could imagine before that changed within a very, very short time frame. And only projects that were able to pivot and adapt and change very quickly kind of survived. No, or other projects were, maybe they didn't have to stop or didn't die, but they didn't prosper either. So that is one factor that really influences project sustainability. Then we have staff training. So if staff is consistently trained, if they have opportunities to learn new things, learn more things, to gain new skills that they need in the project and need in the process, that is always a great factor, because then you have people that are trained, that are at the top of their field, and that know what they're doing, and that obviously contributes towards project sustainability. Then having multiple sources of funding is always a good thing as well, because as you know, if you have just one donor and you lose that donor, then you will get into fall into like a hole, and you have a big problem. If you have multiple sources of funding, that gives you a much more stable base. That is something we talk about when we talk about developing a fundraising strategy. Here you learn the importance of having different income sources to kind of diversify the risk, because then if one goes away, you still have all the others. And yes, you might lose a chunk of money, but you're not falling back onto zero. Organizational stability, obviously, is important, because yeah, you need a stable organization, you need a long-term functioning organization as a partner to implement the project. And if the organization is not stable, if there's problems, issues, quarrels, etc., that obviously reflects badly on project sustainability, because how can the project function and be there long term? Integration into existing systems and political support. If you have the local authorities on your side, that always helps with project sustainability, because that sometimes contributes money. If you can get into the budget and get a line in the budget. But it also gives support for anything else, for papers, for permissions, etc. So if you can get support from existing systems and political parties, political actors, that is going to be very helpful. And one of the most crucial things, and I think for me, one of the most important things, is community support. So if the communities you work with really want that project, really support you, really are on your side, then that is going to contribute to your project sustainability. So all those factors are boxes that you have to check, are things that you can think about in your project if if you can tick those boxes, if you can fulfill those things, and make sure that you think about as much as possible. So now we talk about those three aspects of sustainability. First, the community sustainability. What does it mean? It's the question of how the project will continue in the community once the support ends or fades, no? And it bases on the question, or it rests on the question, how well your project is based in the community. That means if you did a needs assessment with the community, if you asked everyone, like, what is it, what you truly need? Can we work on a plan on how to achieve that? And how can we get there? If you use participatory methods for that, if you have included community members in not only the planning, obviously, but also the implementation, and everything else. So if people are on board with it, and that's a very, very common problem in development cooperation, that projects for a long time have been planned and implemented by outsiders that had no real idea what the people needed. We all know those stories of wells that have been dug where they were not needed, or agricultural produce that has been passed out, like, I don't know, maize or I mean, corn or some lentils that people didn't even want to use, and then it spoiled, etc. So when you don't ask people what they actually need, then you can really plan for something that is not needed. So my best example is I did my doctoral thesis in Nepal, and I did it actually on one of those participatory methods because they are so important to me. And I looked at the applicability of one method that was developed in Europe, in a country like Nepal. And one of the results was that for years, the government representative had spent all the budget on building roads because he was convinced that roads were what the people needed. But after in the interviews and in the process, it became clear that they didn't need roads and they didn't want roads. They needed a water system because they were not able to produce enough produce, enough vegetables, because they were lacking the water. So in that case, obviously, there was no community sustainability of all those projects because the community was never consulted. No? So this concept of ownership, that people really feel like it's their project and it's not somebody else's project, not somebody else who just came in and did something and then goes away again, and then the project stops as well, but somebody who really worked with the community to develop an approach that works, that really satisfies the needs of the community, and that is there for them. No? So that is how you can achieve community sustainability. And again, it is one of the main factors, and it's a factor that is often neglected to some degree. It's also something that donors pay more and more attention to, because this concept of participation, of decentralizing aid, etc., is becoming more and more important also in the grading of proposals. So again, if you can show here that you have new ideas, that you're really talking to communities, working with them, then that means to the donor that you are really doing good work, and it's going to count very positively towards your proposal. Then we have financial sustainability, the second part. So that describes how the project will be funded once the grant runs out. So if you are applying for a grant with a foundation, then what will happen after the foundation, after the 2 years or the 3 years that you get the money? Will there be any other sources of finance, or is the project going to end? Sometimes there's projects that really just need that one-time grant. If you buy something, build something, whatever, but then usually there's still maintenance costs. No? So there are very, very few and far in between projects that really don't have any follow-up cost. Usually there is some kind of follow-up cost. Ideally, projects would always long-term be funded by the government, because usually those projects address things that the government should address. But we all know that that's not realistic. That's not realistic in any country. In Germany, we have the same problem that many projects, even projects that should be covered, are not covered, and that still need to find support in, that they still need to find support with grants. But that would be the ideal case. So if you can describe here, okay, we have the support of the government representative. We have, maybe he said or she said that they want to give some monetary support at some point, or maybe they are just going to help you address somebody higher up, etc. If you can show that, that's one great thing. It's never a good idea to just say, oh, we'll apply for another grant. We see that a lot. I read a lot of proposals. I proofread a lot of proposals. Many people just put there, oh, we'll apply for another grant. But that's not a good idea, because that doesn't show that the project is really sustainable. No, because constantly applying for outsider money is not a sustainable way to finance a project. On the other hand, some projects will always need financing, and there's some people who really critique this this question of needing a sustainability plan, because they say, well, some projects will always need financial support from outside, so why should we even bother filling out this section? But the reality is that donors want to see it, so we have to talk about it. There can be other things like collecting membership fees or like participation fees from people, which is a good idea. I know that anytime I say that, many people say, oh, we work in a developing country, people don't have the money. In Nepal, we made the experience that it is often very good if you collect some kind of fee. So for example, I was working in an agricultural project, so we passed out a lot of tree saplings. And with those tree saplings, when we gave them for free, many of them died. When we only sold them, kind of course, not with a profit, not even at cost, but when people had to pay something for it, they took much better care for that. And there have been like case studies where people were asked why that is. So when there was a tree that they were gifted, then they didn't take care of it and it died, and people asked them, well, why did you let that tree die? And then people said, well, it's not my tree, it's somebody else's tree who put it here. Or they didn't value it as much because they didn't have to sacrifice anything for it. But if you have to pay a little bit of money, then it's also good for the project success. And again, it can be some financial help. You can also work with people that they have to volunteer long term, they have to contribute their own materials, etc. So you can have some contributions, also long-term contributions from beneficiaries actually. And then there's always the possibility or the opportunity to start something like a social enterprise that actually produces something, so that you do have a product that you can sell, where you can make some form of profit. So sometimes that can be like if you run a restaurant or something like that, and sell something, and or if you have produced something from whatever you have, you teach women how to sew, and then you can sell garments, stuff like that. So if you have a social enterprise connected to your project, that can also be very helpful, because if you have a product, then you can also make some money and have some kind of income that can help you. And then you have organizational stability. So that means, the stability from your organization side. So how will your organization be sustained long term? And the question here is, are you there for the long run? Are you going to be a partner that the donor can work with in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? And obviously, are you going to be supporting that project that long? And yeah, it's sometimes if you work in an older organization, that's maybe very obvious, because you might have some funding already, you might have some support. But if your organization is small or relatively new, then you still have to prove that you are going to be there long term. So one thing that you can show here are membership numbers. If you have very high membership numbers, that can help, because then you have membership fees, and you can also count how many supporters you have. Or if you already have saved money, if you have some resources, you can show that and say, well, look, we are financially stable, so we're going to be here long term. All of those are things that you can show, so that it becomes clear that your organization itself is going to be there for the long run and is going to be a long-term partner. So how can you achieve project sustainability? I've already shared a couple of examples with you, so you can think of, obviously you can also apply for another grant. Financial sustainability can also be achieved that way. But when you want to write that into your sustainability plan or in the proposal, you also have to clarify that you've already done some research, foundations that would do follow-up funding, that would be interested in that kind of project. All of these boxes need to be ticked. So you need to be sure that you have somebody on hand that could be a good partner, and that you've already done the first steps. So what donors actually want to see in the sustainability plan is that you have thought about it, that you have made a plan. There's no guarantee that the plan that you made will be executed the way that you're hoping, but at least you have thought about it, and that's what you should show. So how can you achieve project sustainability? I think about, with thinking about all the aspects we talked about before, starting very early on with the community sustainability. So how can you involve people? How can you use participatory methods to make sure that people are really heard, that their interests are taken into account when you plan for a project? Then you have to think about different ways of financing the project long term, and obviously have to secure your organizational sustainability. But as you notice, all those things are things that you cannot do just at the end. No, that's one of the most common mistakes that I think happens, that organizations just start thinking about the sustainability plan at the very end, because usually it's one of the last sections of the proposal. So they leave it for last and then just tag on some things onto that. But usually, if you do have a good sustainability plan that you have developed individually from proposal writing, then you already have many ideas on how you want to make sure that your projects will function long term. No? Then you can draw from that. So I think it's a good idea to write a sustainability plan, even if you don't want to immediately apply for money, or if you don't have to write a proposal right now. And all those things are things that have to be planned long term. Obviously, if you say we want to achieve sustainability, financial sustainability by running a social enterprise, that is nothing that you can just do in 5 minutes. Obviously, if you want to have a social enterprise, it has to be an activity throughout your entire project. So it will influence all other areas of your project. So you have to think about it very early on. If you are thinking of including the opinions and insight of your target group, that is something you have to do even before the project. So it's something you have to start with very early on. Now I would just want to talk about a couple of common mistakes, or things that we've seen a lot that were not done so well in a sustainability plan. So the thing that people often, when the donor asks, like, what's your sustainability plan, oftentimes they write about the environmental sustainability. So for example, then they put, we will put up recycling bins, or we don't use plastic bags, or something like that. That is important, and that you should point that out, definitely. But it's something that usually is not the thing they ask for in this section, if they have not clarified otherwise. Usually in this section, they really want to understand how your project is going to sustain itself long term. What is the project sustainability? Because that is the interesting thing for the donors. They want to see if their investment is a good one, if it's going to be a long-term one, if your organization can function long-term. Don't be superficial. So don't choose just a couple of buzzwords and say, we'll apply for another grant and collect donations from target group, something like that. Really think about these things. There's some questions that you can ask yourself, and I think we have them in the resource guide that I will share later, that can lead you towards developing a sustainability plan. But they will also lead you towards really thinking deeply about how your project runs, how it is designed, who you're working for, who you're working with, and where you can maybe include some elements that can end up contributing towards your project sustainability. No? So don't be just superficial and think quickly about these things, but think in depth about what you can do to ensure that this project is going to function long term, that the benefits of the project are going to be there and keep benefiting the people you work with, the target group, and that the impact that you have is going to be a long-term one. Don't focus just on one area. So we have those 3 areas that should be covered if possible. The community sustainability, financial sustainability, and organizational. And again, don't focus on just one area. Usually that's the financial sustainability that people focus on, and they only talk about that. But yeah, if you also talk about what you are doing to ensure community sustainability, what you're doing to include people in the planning and implementation of your projects, what you are doing to make sure that their voices are heard, to make sure that they feel like they have ownership of the project, they have a part to say. You also have to show those things, and also about the organizational sustainability. You can't just assume that everybody knows that your organization is stable, but you have to show it somehow. It doesn't have to be long and much, but yeah, covering the question if you are going to be a good long-term partner is also important. Don't focus only on one area. Don't only say how you're going to financially sustain the project, but also show that you understand the other dimensions. Then make sure that your ideas are reflected throughout the proposal. If you develop those great ideas, like forming a social enterprise or consulting with people, making sure that locals are on the board of your local organization that you have formed, stuff like that, that needs to be reflected in your proposal. So if you, well, I'm very sorry, I just have issues breathing, so I have to keep pausing. If you, for example, plan to form a local NGO, which is a great way to ensure community sustainability, because then you get people to really, yeah, also on a structural level, work with your project. If you have a local NGO with a local structure that supports whatever, the school, the training company, whatever you are doing on the ground, you have local people in your organization, in your structure. So that is a great step, but that needs to be done. No, that can't be done in the last month of your project, and it needs some support. So you need to have a line for that in your budget. You need to cover those activities. You need some time to do it. You need a timeline. All of that needs to be reflected throughout your proposal. The same if you want to start a social enterprise. Again, a great idea. It can be one of the easiest and best ways to ensure project sustainability if you have a company, a non-profit company running with it, but it needs to be done. It cannot, those things don't just come out of thin air. There have to be activities leading to that. You probably need to train people. You need to educate people that they can act in those capacities, etc. So all of those things need to be reflected throughout your entire proposal. Don't start too late. That is why those things often happen, because it's one of the things that gets filled out last in a proposal. And if you don't have a sustainability plan to draw from, but if you have to make something up, then it's often too late to make sure that this is properly reflected throughout the entire document. So don't make that mistake and start too late. Try to start as early as you can. And if you have the capacity within your organization, then try to develop a sustainability plan for your generation, for your organization as a whole, to make sure that you have something when you have a proposal and you have to fill out the section, that you already know which direction you want to go into. How are you generally engaging project participants? How are you generally going to make money with your organization? How are you generally going to start social enterprises, etc.? If you have ideas about that, it's much easier to put that into a proposal and put that into a short text. But if you have no ideas at all and you start late, then sometimes it becomes this superficial part of the proposal. Like I said, I see that a lot of times. That is not really convincing. And again, if you take the time, this is a section where you can really convince the donors, because you can distinguish yourself. Because if you do this well, I can guarantee you are different than many others, because not everybody does this well. I've seen many not convincing sustainability sections in a proposal, sustainability plans in general, because yeah, people just don't understand how far-reaching this is, and also how important this is and how well they can score points with donors. Then there's just a couple of next steps, things that you can do maybe after this webinar, after you take some time to think about what we shared today. Make sure that everybody understands the importance of the sustainability plan within your organization. So share what you learned today, talk with people about the importance of this, also the importance for donors, the importance when you work with grants, etc. Then update your strategy. If you have a fundraising strategy, you can update it and include parts of the sustainability plan. Make sure your plan is reflected in your next proposal. So when you write a proposal, you can immediately use it to fill out that section. Don't treat it as an afterthought, obviously. So this is crucial. If you want to do well here, you really have to think everything through, and you really have to pay attention to detail. And be creative and think of ways that your project can run in the long term. There's not only one way. There's not only the straight way. It can be many different things. So just be a bit creative and think about how to solve those issues. By the end, as I said, we also have a resource guide that we have developed about the sustainability plan. So it's a resource guide with a lot of text explanations and then a list of questions that really help you to develop a plan. And usually we sell this book, this ebook, for $20, but today as a special offer, we want to offer it at $10 only. So I think my team is probably sharing the link now or soon, so that you can click through to get this if you're interested. Otherwise, we will also send this in a follow-up email so you can get the discounted rate. It's a great resource guide that really helps you to plan through and to go through all the steps that are needed to develop a sustainability plan. We also have many other online courses that we have developed. A couple of them are free, a couple of them are paid, and we have general topics like writing a project plan or online fundraising, and more specific ones like fundraising from US foundations, from US aid, or creating a log frame, stuff like that. So you can check out our website, philanthropia.org, to see all the courses that we offer. Yeah, check out for yourself if anything is interesting here. And because you joined today, you can get 35% off of any of the courses that you find on the website with the coupon code fundraise. So if you use that coupon code, you can get this 35% discount on all of our products. We also have another service that we offer, which is called donordatabase.org. It's a homepage where we have a database of donors. You just type in your country and your area of work, and it shows you a list of potential donors, foundations. It's more than 5,000 profiles available. So it shows you who could be a potential donor. Obviously, then you have to keep researching them further, but it's a great start. And you can use it as a starting point to discover who is out there funding projects. The first week is free, so you can just go ahead and try it. Then if you don't like it or if you can't pay, you can cancel. Otherwise, it's a very reasonable price as well. So please check out donordatabase.org as well, and you will see. Yeah, now we still have some time for questions. And if you have any questions afterwards or want to get more information, please check philanthropia.org or contact us at info@philanthropia.org for any queries. So we have a couple of questions that I will answer. We have still 5 minutes left. First question from Juliet. Does this mean that all factors influencing project sustainability must be included in a project sustainability plan for a donor? And no, they don't. I think the three things you should address are the community sustainability, financial, and organizational sustainability. Those things you should address. But if you have anything positive in the other areas, I mean, you can also show that. If you are planning to train your staff constantly, then you can just let them know. And that's one argument that will help the donor to understand that you're really dedicated to making this project a success. No, if you have a theory of change, you can explain how this project fits within it and why it's a great part of it, etc. You can look at those factors that I talked about and use them if you have them included in your project, but you don't have to. Often in a proposal, you don't have that much space either, so you have to keep it short, and then you wouldn't include all of it. Then there's a question, if we rely heavily on grants and proposals for fundraising, what would be the other supporting factors for the financial sustainability where we need to convince the donor other than grants, knowing that we're not investing in the different types of the fundraising pillars so far? If you know that you are dependent on grants long-term, then it's not a bad thing per se, but then I think I would show your experience in grant writing and letting them know that that actually is the viable option. Because if you just say, oh, we'll apply for another grant, then sometimes that looks like it's just the easy solution, and you don't really have anything in mind yet about where exactly to apply. So if you show your experience, and if you show that you know where you want to apply and how you want to go about it, and that you've already researched, and that donor also actually does fund projects that have already started, etc. That is also a good thing to say. You just have to show your experience and show why that is actually a viable alternative. And there's a question. If the donor asks specifically for financial sustainability, do we still need to talk about the other areas? Yeah, maybe not, but I think I would. Of course, if it just says financial sustainability, I would heavily focus on financial sustainability, but maybe add another sentence at least about the other two sections, just to make sure that you covered everything. But then heavily focus on financial sustainability if the donors specifically asked for that. And then there's a question, how can we search for donors who are willing to provide funds for projects in India? We have a couple of resources and videos online about donor research that you can check out on our YouTube channel, but also if you go to donordatabase.org, you can try that, because you can find many donors with that as well. But again, we have free resources, free videos about donor research, and you can check those out as well. Okay, I think I went over all the questions that I was able to see until now. Yeah, thank you so much for participating today. We will send the follow-up material by email. Maybe make sure that our emails don't end up in your spam filter by making sure that the address is known. And follow us on social media, subscribe to our YouTube channel to not miss anything in the future. And I hope to see you again in one of our next webinars. Thank you so much, and I hope this was useful for you. If you want to share any feedback with us, please feel free to do so via email as well at info@philanthropia.org. It's always nice to hear if you have positive experiences with us. Maybe you've learned something that you were able to use, and that helped you to win a grant or something like that. We'd love to hear about that. And for now, I'm saying goodbye. Have a good rest of the week and all the best. Thank you.